The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as Pam Bondi stepped inside. A former Florida Attorney General, Bondi had built a career on fearlessness, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to justice. She wasn't just another lawyer. She was a force of nature, a prosecutor known for dismantling corruption and standing tall against powerful figures who thought they were untouchable. Today, she was in court to argue a critical case. The stakes were high, and the defendant was a well-connected businessman accused of large-scale fraud. The outcome of this trial could shake the legal and political landscape. As Bondi took her seat at the plaintiff's table, she could feel the weight of the room pressing down on her. The defense had pulled every trick in the book to stall, mislead, and manipulate the case. But Bondi wasn't one to be intimidated. What she didn't know was that the biggest obstacle wasn't the defense team. It was the man sitting on the judge's bench. As the proceedings began, it became clear that something was off. Judge Robert Calloway, a man with decades on a bench, carried himself with an air of arrogance. His piercing eyes scanned the courtroom, but when they landed on Pam Bondi, there was a distinct shift in his demeanor. Animosity flickered across his face. Bondi had encountered difficult judges before, but this felt different. The judge was not just skeptical, he seemed outright hostile. From the very start, he interrupted her opening statement, dismissing her points with a wave of his hand. "This is not a political rally, Ms. Bondi," he sneered, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Stick to the facts and keep your theatrics out of my courtroom." Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Bondi narrowed her eyes but remained composed. She had faced worse. But what she didn't know was that this hostility ran deeper than courtroom decorum. Judge Calloway had personal reasons to despise her, and soon his arrogance would cost him everything. As the trial continued, Judge Calloway's hostility escalated. He dismissed Bondi's objections without consideration and frequently sided with the opposing counsel. But then he took it a step further. "You must think you're still on TV, Ms. Bondi," he scoffed. "This is a court of law, not some political circus where you can grandstand for attention." A stunned silence filled the courtroom. Gasps rippled through the audience, and even the opposing counsel looked uncomfortable. Pam Bondi straightened her posture, her years as Florida's Attorney General keeping her calm under pressure. She met the judge's glare with a steady, unwavering gaze. "With all due respect, Your Honor," she said, her voice steady, "I'm here to argue the law, not entertain insults. I expect to be treated with the same professionalism as any other attorney in this courtroom." Judge Calloway smirked. "Respect is earned, not demanded," he shot back. "And so far, I'm not impressed." Bondi's jaw tightened. This wasn't just unprofessional, it was blatant bias. And she wasn't going to let it slide. What the judge didn't realize was that every word, every action was being recorded, and someone very powerful was already watching. Unbeknownst to Judge Calloway, an influential figure had been monitoring the trial from afar. Seated in the back of the courtroom was a federal investigator, dispatched after multiple complaints about the judge's questionable conduct. As Calloway continued his verbal attacks on Pam Bondi, the investigator took meticulous notes. Every insult, every unfair ruling, and every dismissive remark was logged. Bondi, however, remained composed. She knew better than to react emotionally. Instead, she carefully structured her arguments, making it clear that the judge's bias was interfering with due process. Then, Calloway made a fatal mistake. "Frankly, Ms. Bondi, I don't care what the law says," he sneered. "In my courtroom, I decide what's fair." A collective gasp spread through the courtroom. The opposing counsel even shifted uneasily. Pam Bondi's lips pressed into a thin line. That statement had just sealed the judge's fate. The investigator quietly exited the room, making a direct call to the chief judge of the district. The wheels of justice had begun turning against Judge Calloway. He just didn't know it yet. As the courtroom settled into uneasy silence, a clerk subtly slipped a note to Judge Calloway. He frowned as he unfolded it, his eyes scanning the hastily scribbled words. "Federal oversight in attendance. Be careful." A flicker of uncertainty crossed his face, but arrogance quickly replaced it. He crumpled the note and scoffed. "Federal oversight? Please. They wouldn't dare challenge my courtroom." Pam Bondi, meanwhile, kept her composure, but internally, she knew something had shifted. The judge had been warned. Whether he heeded that warning or not would determine his fate. But Calloway was too drunk on power to change course. Instead of backing down, he doubled down. He turned to Pam with a smirk. "Ms. Bondi, I suggest you tread carefully. You're pushing the limits of my patience, and I can hold you in contempt if I feel like it." Pam simply tilted her head, her calm gaze unwavering. "Your Honor, I believe the law speaks for itself." Judge Calloway laughed, shaking his head. "The law? The law is what I say it is in my courtroom." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the opposing counsel shifted uncomfortably. From the back of the courtroom, the federal investigator tapped a message on his phone. Confirmed misconduct. Escalating immediately. Calloway had no idea that he had just crossed a line he couldn't come back from. Pam Bondi remained composed, but she knew things had escalated beyond mere insults. Judge Calloway had just openly admitted that he believed the law bent to his will, a statement that could cost him everything. Meanwhile, in the gallery, murmurs spread like wildfire. Reporters exchanged glances, some already typing notes. The tension was palpable. Then a new voice echoed through the courtroom. "Objection, Your Honor." It wasn't Pam. It was a senior attorney seated near the back, one of the silent observers from the State Bar Association. His presence had gone unnoticed until now, but his firm, authoritative tone demanded attention. Judge Calloway's smirk faltered for the briefest moment. "On what grounds?" he snapped, masking his unease. The attorney stood. "On the grounds that you just publicly admitted to judicial bias. Your words alone constitute grounds for an ethics review, and I believe the federal oversight in this courtroom has already taken note." The judge's face reddened. "This is my courtroom. I decide what's admissible here." Pam finally spoke, her voice measured. "No, Judge Calloway. The law decides. And right now, it's deciding against you." A tense pause followed. Then a rustle of movement. Two federal marshals, dressed in crisp suits, began making their way down the aisle. The judge froze. He had ruled with impunity for years, but now, the weight of his unchecked arrogance was crashing down on him. Judge Calloway's confident facade began to crack as he saw the federal marshals approaching. His fingers gripped the gavel tightly, his knuckles turning white. "This is outrageous," he barked, his voice tinged with panic. "I'm a sitting judge. You have no right." One of the marshals, a towering man with a sharp gaze, calmly pulled out a document. "Your Honor, this is a federal warrant for your immediate detention. We have evidence of judicial misconduct, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice." The courtroom gasped. Even the most seasoned lawyers in the room sat in stunned silence. Pam Bondi folded her arms, watching the judge squirm. She had seen corruption before, but watching it unravel in real time was something else entirely. "You think you can just—" Judge Calloway tried to argue, but the second marshal produced a set of handcuffs. "You have two choices, sir," the first marshal continued. "You come with us quietly, or we remove you from the bench by force." A bead of sweat trickled down Calloway's temple. He was cornered, and he knew it. Then, in a final act of desperation, he did something no one expected. He slammed his gavel down and shouted, "Court is adjourned," a pathetic attempt to reclaim control. But it was too late. The marshal seized his arms, pulling him up from his chair as he struggled. "This is a mistake," Calloway shrieked, thrashing against them. "I'll have your jobs." "Oh." Pam took a step closer, her voice calm but firm. "No, Judge. You won't. Not anymore." As the marshals led the disgraced judge out of the courtroom, the entire room sat in shock. Reporters scribbled frantically, cameras flashed, and whispers filled the air. For the first time in his career, Judge Calloway wasn't in charge. He was just another criminal being led away in cuffs. As Judge Calloway was dragged out of the courtroom in handcuffs, the entire room erupted into a chaotic mix of gasps, whispers, and stunned silence. Reporters scrambled to capture the moment, snapping photos and sending urgent updates to their networks. Pam Bondi stood tall, unfazed, watching the once powerful judge be taken away like a common criminal. "Unbelievable," one attorney muttered under his breath. "I always knew he was corrupt," another whispered to a colleague. The jurors sat frozen, unable to process what had just happened. One woman even clutched her pearls, staring in shock. Then the court clerk, still visibly shaken, hesitantly cleared her throat and attempted to restore order. The court will recess until further notice." But the damage had been done. Judge Calloway's downfall was unfolding before everyone's eyes. As Pam turned to leave, a reporter rushed up to her, microphone in hand. Ms. Bondi, what just happened here? Did you anticipate this outcome? Pam took a measured breath, her eyes unwavering. I came here today to do my job and ensure justice was served. What happened with Judge Calloway is a reflection of what happens when those in power abuse their positions. No one, not even a judge, is above the law. The reporter pressed further. Do you believe there are more corrupt officials within the system? Pam smirked slightly, tilting her head. Let's just say, this is only the beginning. With that, she turned and strode confidently out of the courtroom, leaving behind a storm of questions, speculation, and the crumbling legacy of a once feared judge. Within minutes of Judge Calloway's shocking arrest, news channels lit up with breaking headlines. Television CNN, Judge Calloway arrested in stunning courtroom twist, Pam Bondi strikes back. Television Fox News, corrupt judge exposed, justice finally served. Television MSNBC, legal earthquake. Judge Calloway's dark secrets unraveling. Social media exploded. The hashtag Calloway Corrupt began trending on X, formerly Twitter, with thousands of users debating the scandal. Speech balloon Pam Bondi just destroyed a corrupt judge on live TV. Absolute queen. Speech balloon, this is why we need more fearless prosecutors. No one is above the law. Speech balloon, how many more judges are this dirty? The system needs a purge. Meanwhile, inside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the hallways, demanding statements from attorneys, witnesses, and officials. A press conference was hastily arranged, where a spokesperson for the court addressed the media. Loudspeaker Judge Calloway has been taken into custody pending an internal investigation. At this time, we cannot comment further on the charges. But the real bombshell came an hour later, when the FBI released a statement confirming a deeper investigation into Calloway's dealings. Judge Calloway has been under surveillance for suspected judicial misconduct and financial improprieties. His arrest today is part of an ongoing federal probe. The nation was in shock. Pam Bondi, however, was far from finished. As she sat in her office later that evening, a confidential folder landed on her desk. Inside, more names, more corrupt officials, more cases to crack open. She smirked. This is just the beginning. The arrest of Judge Calloway was only the tip of the iceberg. Within days, the FBI launched a full-scale investigation into the judge's activities. Reports began surfacing about his involvement in multiple cases, all of which had suspicious rulings and backdoor deals. Calloway was not only accused of bribery, but also influence peddling and using his position to silence witnesses and cover up crimes for wealthy individuals. The FBI quickly unearthed a web of corruption that spanned decades. Dozens of sealed documents from the judge's chambers were recovered, many of them containing hidden payments and illicit agreements. The investigation was still in its early stages, but it was already clear that Calloway wasn't working alone. As the investigation progressed, Pam Bondi's role became even more crucial. Her reputation as a no-nonsense prosecutor had only grown after her victory over Calloway, and she began to take the reins of the inquiry. She called in top investigators, including private forensic accountants, to track down the money trails leading to Calloway's illicit wealth. Bondi made a series of public statements, urging the community to come forward with any information about the judge. She also called for greater transparency in the judicial system, demanding that those in positions of power be held accountable. Her words resonated across the country, with people praising her for standing up against the system that often protected corrupt officials. As the FBI's investigation into Judge Calloway gained momentum, the fallout from his arrest began to shake the legal community. Several high-profile cases that had been overseen by Calloway were now under scrutiny. Defense attorneys began to question the legitimacy of past rulings, particularly in cases involving wealthy defendants who had previously benefited from favorable judgments. Lawyers for some of the wrong parties started to file motions for new trials, citing conflict of interest and corruption in Calloway's handling of their cases. In one high-profile case, the family of a man who had been wrongfully convicted filed a lawsuit against the state, demanding compensation and the release of new evidence. With the pressure mounting, Judge Calloway was forced to cooperate with investigators in exchange for a reduced sentence. As he sat in his jail cell, he began to reveal his involvement in a massive criminal enterprise that spanned multiple states. According to his testimony, he had received bribes from organized crime syndicates, real estate moguls, and even politicians. He had used his position to steer court rulings in favor of certain clients and had even been involved in witness tampering to ensure favorable outcomes for the rich and powerful. Calloway's revelations sent shockwaves through the judicial system, and new charges were added to his list of offenses, including racketeering and conspiracy to obstruct justice. While Calloway's arrest and cooperation with the FBI were significant victories, Pam Bondi knew the battle was far from over. She began working with other prosecutors and law enforcement agencies to uncover the full extent of corruption within the judicial system. Bondi was determined to root out anyone who had been complicit in Calloway's schemes and bring them to justice. In a powerful press conference, Bondi revealed her plan to establish a special task force focused on investigating judicial corruption. She made it clear that no one, not even the highest-ranking officials, would be exempt from scrutiny. Months later, the impact of Pam Bondi's relentless pursuit of justice was clear. Calloway was sentenced to life in prison for his crimes, and the investigation had led to the arrest of several other corrupt judges and attorneys who had been working with him. The legal landscape had been irrevocably altered. Pam Bondi had exposed a deeply entrenched system of corruption and had brought real change to the judicial system. As for Bondi herself, her reputation as a champion of justice was solidified. She continued to work on high-profile cases and fight for legal reforms, ensuring that the people of her state would always have someone who would stand up for them, no matter the cost. In the end, justice prevailed, and the case of Judge Calloway would forever be remembered as a turning point in the fight against judicial corruption.